The Strangerhood, released in 2004. After the popularity Red vs. Blue had gained, Roosterteeth was looking for any and all ways they could capitalize and expand the amount of content they made. The Strangerhood was the result. Considering Roosterteeth was still a small handful of friends at the time, machinimating was really their only way of making shows. This time around, however, they used The Sims 2 as their method of doing so. The plot revolves around an assorted group of individuals who have no idea who they are or where they came from. A mysterious voice is there to tell them what they need to do, as he is seemingly the cause for what's happening. At first, it seems like it's parodying elimination type shows where a bunch of people who have never met compete against each other in different challenges until someone wins. They do that one time in a cooking challenge, but afterwards it goes wherever it wants. One of the residents, Nikki, gets killed off really early, and so everyone's suspicious for who the murderer is. It's like the 1945 film And Then There Were None, where a bunch of people are gathered to a central location having no idea who anyone else is, and slowly they each begin to be killed off in search for the murderer. This story is the inspiration for where 10 Little Roosters came from, but a similar concept seems to have been used for this show. Prince Nikita was even the first one to be killed in the movie. He said to call him Nikki, and she was the first one to die here as well.
My name is Prince Nikita Starlov. Call me Nikki.
Nikki's dead! Oh, not Nikki!
But whereas the movie was a murder mystery where all of the characters were in danger of death, The Strangerhood only works with one character death. It's not nearly as important as I'm making it out to be, but it's the only real sort of plot it has going on. It's not hard to see that the show focused directly on comedy over story. Like, Red vs. Blue is funny, especially considering that at the time we were still in Blood Gulch, but there was always that semblance of story. It felt like a narrative that just so happened to be funny. But for this show, it seems like they decided, let's make something funny and kind of throw in a plot. The result was a lot of meta jokes and slapstick humor. It's the type of comedy you typically get out of shows that don't know what it is. Typically, humor is centered around the environment around them, jokes and lines that can be made in this show, but not others. But here, it doesn't necessarily know how to be clever with it, so it attempts to call itself out as often as possible. Self-referential jokes definitely aren't my sense of comedy because to me, it just seems like lazy writing. The characters definitely tried to pull off the same thing that happened in Red vs. Blue by giving each and every one of them their own defining personality quirk that makes them stand out. It definitely worked as I don't confuse any of them for the other, but they overextended when it came to their acting ability. In Red vs. Blue, it was just them and their innate ability to act. But here it's almost as if they made sure that none of their voices from Red vs. Blue were noticeable. No one sounds like they do in that, and it seems like a weird decision to me. I can get not wanting to use the same voice for a different series, but it's literally just your voice. With the exclusion of Matt as Sarge, everyone else sounded like their normal selves. It was actually the reverse for him. Matt went from doing an accent to sounding like he actually does.
All right. I must have forgotten, or blocked it out. Ooh, that lamp.
Their acting was decent in Red vs. Blue, but when forced to tack on an accent, their acting went straight down the drain. Nikki and Catherine were decent, but they weren't as over the top as the rest of the cast.
I don't think we need to discuss this any further. The important thing is, someone still needs to kill Nikki.
Inside, I found a secret room with secret documents that contain secret information about...
What kind of secrets?
Bernie even once again voices two of the characters. I guess making Jeff and Gus share one character wasn't the best decision.
You will notice many changes. Some of them will be pleasurable.
For a series that was machinimated in The Sims, it's surprising how it turned out. It must have been a complete nightmare to get everything together and building relationships so certain characters could interact. Just the process as a whole seems impressive, but I don't know if the effort translates to the screen. I admire the work that was put in, but of every machinimated show Roosterteeth has done, I'd probably say Strangerhood is the worst. It's definitely their second most well-known machinima, but that probably had something to do with timing as well as originality. The models offer much more expression than anything that can be done in Halo, and the game's inherent mechanics set them up to do all kinds of things. It's something that I admire about this series. They don't just write a story and attempt to shove it in whatever game allows for them to free cam. They look at what the game has to offer and what can be done, and then form a story from there. I remember seeing this in their store for only 99 cents. I hadn't seen it at the time and I thought, well, for $1, what's the harm? Yes, I could have watched it online for free, but I'm a big fan of having a physical copy that I can see on my shelf. After I watched it for the first time, I remember thinking to myself, yeah, 99 cents seems about right. It's only about an hour long, so there's no real harm being done. There's not much special to this series, it's not good, and it's not the funniest thing that they've made. It's just kinda stupid fun. But if you're a fan of Rooster Teeth, then you definitely have to watch it, as it is a piece of their history. Season 2 of The Strangerhood. This is the perfect example of a joke being taken seriously. Ray Narvaez Jr. and Mike Kroom, formerly of the Internet Box, started their own running joke to make another season of The Strangerhood, and it caught on.
Another thing, Bernie hates Mike and I now.
Oh yeah.
The conference room is open, that's where Bernie was sitting. He was on his laptop or some shit. He's in there by himself, so he's just thinking out loud. He's like, why is it every time we talk about or mention a new project, people immediately fucking say Strangerhood 2? And I'm just like laughing kind of to myself. And then he comes outside, he sticks his head out, and he looks at me, he's like, you have anything to do with this? I fucking lost it. And then I'm like, well, kinda. It's me and Mike. He's like, Mike? I'm like, yeah, H Mike? He's like, that Mike? I'm like, yep. Like, me and him. Just make it happen, Burns, and then you won't have to worry about it
dumbass that tripped over his own leg?
Yep.
Just make it happen.
In 2014, funding for their movie Laser Team began, and one of the stretch goals on there was The Strangerhood 2. So, 9 years after the first season had ended, production began. It picks up immediately after season 1's end, where everyone was transported back to their respective time period, but now we're following the perspective of Wade. As president, his plan is to prevent what happens in the future and stop the Strangerhood from ever happening. To stop it, he must create it. Much like the original, there are an assorted group of stereotypes gathered into a house for various challenges. Wade's goal seems to attempt to make them better people, so it's not exactly like the original. As far as the new cast goes, they don't have anywhere near the same likability that the last ones did. The group before weren't great characters, but at least the majority had a bit of charm to them. The new cast is just annoying in every sense, and even when the season finished, I didn't think that they improved. Ray also plays himself, making him the first ever legitimate self-insert character in any of Rooster Teeth's shows. He's labeled as the #1 fan because of the aforementioned joke he kept making. The season only has 4 episodes, so it's being very generous when I call it a season. But hey, the joke was Strangerhood Season 2, not Strangerhood miniseries spin-off. Considering it was so short this time around, it had to set up a plot and characters the first episode, and then wrap up whatever wacky scenario they were in by episode 4. I recall when the season was getting made, there were all kinds of comments not understanding what the hell was going on. It wasn't very well received by people who didn't understand the joke. You either stood on one of two sides. Either you thought it was funny because you knew the meme, or you thought Rooster Teeth was finally scraping the bottom of the barrel with ideas and creativity. I didn't watch Rooster Teeth at the time they began releasing the first season, mainly because I was 7, so I don't know the kind of reception it got during its debut. But for season 2, it seemed massively negative. The views definitely weren't there, as it was struggling to get over 100,000 after the first episode. There's not really much to say about this season other than it's not as charming as the original. In conclusion, I think the series is best summed up from this lyric. The show's bad, it's good. Well, it's The Strangerhood.